woman. But Katherine was unusual. She did not conform to many of the conventional norms expected of women in that age, and in several respects, her story has relevance for us today. Feminist scholars are now beginning to see her from a new perspective as a woman who, in a male-dominated age, was an important personage in her own right, had remarkable opportunities, made her own choices, and took control of her own destiny, very rare at that time. Katherine was intelligent, poised and talented, and she was fortunate enough to move in circles where these qualities were valued and indeed encouraged in women. Among the choices she faced will be ones that will be familiar to women today, such as how to juggle marriage and children and a career. Although Katherine's modern contemporaries would not have to endure the moral backlash that at one time rebounded on Katherine and probably wrecked her life, but they would identify with her as a woman who coped brilliantly with the sweeping and sometimes devastating changes of fortune that befell her. Above all, Katherine Swynford occupies an unprecedented position in the history of the English monarchy. Dynastically, she is an important figure. She was the mother of the Beauforts, and through them the ancestress of the Yorkist kings, the Tudors, the Stuarts, and every British sovereign since 1461. A prodigious legacy for anyone. Without her, the course of English history would have been very different. The bare facts of Katherine's story are known to us, but the details are obscured by time or are controversial. In fact, everything about her is controversial. Her ancestry, the important dates in her life, the number of children she bore, her character, what she looked like, and above all, the course of her relationship with her princely lover. In approaching her story, the historian is continually weighing up a balance of possibilities and probabilities. And yet, from the fragmented information that we possess, some credible inferences may be drawn and some surprising conclusions can be made. Katherine Swynford was born around 1350, the daughter of Panderoe, a knight of Hainault, which is now part of Belgium. Her mother's name is unknown, but she may have been a member of the House of Auvergne, the ducal family of Hainault. Panderoe came to England in 1328 in the train of Philip of Hainault when she came to marry Edward III of England. And around 1352, his younger daughters, Catherine and Philippa, were fortuitously placed in the household of the kindly Queen Philippa, their countrywoman. It may have been in 1360, when she was around 10, that Catherine was placed in the household of Blanche of Lancaster, the beautiful young wife of John of Gaunt, to help in the nursery. She quickly won the respect and affection of her employer, with whom she was to remain for 8 years, proving herself pious, intelligent, capable, and good with children. Living in the Lancastrian household, Catherine would have witnessed the great love that was between John of Gaunt and his Duchess. If Chaucer is to be believed, John was of the opinion he could not have chosen a better wife, for Blanche was good, loyal, and true, the queen of all my body. Throughout their marriage, he belonged to her entire, and there's no record of him dishonouring his vows. And no breath of scandal tainted his name, which is in sharp contrast to the reputation he was to gain during his second marriage. Chaucer has John declare, "Our joy was ever fresh and new, our hearts were so in harmony that neither was ever contrary to the other heart when sorrows came." Now it's worthy of notice that in his idyllic portrayal of the married love between John and Blanche, Chaucer made a dramatic departure from contemporary literary practice in which marriage is seen as sounding the death knell to love, which can only flourish in a courtly or illicit context. This striking departure itself suggests the conjugal relationship between John and Blanche was unusually close and tender. Around 1362, when she was 12, the youngest age at which the church permitted a wife to cohabit with her husband, Catherine herself was married to John of Gaunt's retainer, the impecunious Sir Hugh Swynford, and she found herself mistress of the poverty-stricken Kettlethorpe Hall in Lincolnshire, and that must have come as a stark contrast to the splendour of the Lancastrian Palace of the Savoy in London, or the great castles at Hertford, Kenilworth, and Leicester. But Catherine showed her mettle, immersing herself so enthusiastically in the life of the manor that for decades to come she would be known as the Lady of Kettlethorpe. In the years following her marriage, she divided her time between her husband's estates and the Lancastrian court, whilst bearing a son, Thomas Swynford, and 2, possibly 3 daughters, to one of whom the Duke and Duchess of Lancaster stood as sponsors. Meanwhile, Catherine's younger sister, Philippa, had married the King's esquire, the poet Geoffrey Chaucer. Chaucer appears already to have earned the friendship and admiration of John of Gaunt, and his career at court would certainly be boosted through his sister-in-law's connections with the Duke. One of Chaucer's earliest poems was the beautiful elegy he wrote for the Duchess Blanche, who died in childbirth in 1368, and it bears testimony to the overwhelming grief of her husband. In the poem, which is a dream sequence, Chaucer imagines himself wandering through a forest. A hunt is going on in the distance, and then all at once he sees a young man in black seated against a tree, musing mournfully. For I am sorrow, and sorrow is I, says the man in black. My bliss is gone, my joy is lost for evermore, and there exists no happiness. Without revealing what tragedy has overtaken him, he tells the friendly stranger, Chaucer, how he'd won the love of his lady, despite being rebuffed several times. He says he'd fallen in love at a tender age, and that love is with him still. He describes in minute detail his lady's beauty and qualities. I seem to see her evermore, he declares. She was my hap, my heel, and all my bliss. While I live, I'll evermore remember her. Eventually, Chaucer asks, where is she now? She is dead, comes the bitter reply.